Kazimierz Kay-Skrzypecki was a British luger known for his participation in the sport during the early 1960s. Born in Poland, he moved to Britain and represented his new country in international luge competitions. 1964 was the year the sports luge made its debut in the Olympics. Little did everyone knew that this would leave an everlasting impact on generations to come. On January 23, 1964, Kay-Skrzypecki was involved in a training session on the challenging Innsbruck luge track, which was known for its technical difficulty and high speeds. During the run, he lost control of his sled on a particularly treacherous part of the course. The luge track featured sharp turns and fast descents that required precise control. Kay-Skrzypecki's sled skidded off the track, crashing violently into a barrier placed along the edge. The impact of the crash was severe and fatal. Despite the immediate response from medical personnel, Kay-Skrzypecki suffered catastrophic injuries. The force of the collision with the barrier resulted in his death, marking a tragic end to his Olympic aspirations. His accident, along with others in the sport, spurred discussions about the safety of luge tracks and led to improvements in track design and athlete safety to prevent similar tragedies in future competitions. However, decades later, something similarly horrifying tragedy struck, with a 21-year-old in the 2010 Winter Olympics. Nodar Kumaritashvili was a determined young athlete who had worked tirelessly to represent Georgia in the high-speed sport of luge. As the 2010 Winter Olympics in Whistler, Canada approached, Nodar was eager to showcase his skills on the world stage. The luge event, known for its high speeds and demanding precision, was set to be one of the most thrilling competitions of the Games. The track was especially challenging, with sharp turns and steep drops that required expert control and nerves of steel. On February 12, 2010, just days before the official start of the Games, 21-year-old Nodar was participating in a routine training session on the Olympic luge track. As he approached a particularly difficult section of the track, something went wrong. He lost control of his sled, which skidded out of its lane and sent him careening off course. In a split second, he crashed into a support pole with tremendous force at a speed of nearly 145 km per hour. The impact was devastating. Medical personnel were on the scene almost immediately, but the injuries he sustained were severe. Despite their best efforts, Nodar Kumaritashvili succumbed to his injuries, marking a tragic end to what should have been the pinnacle of his athletic career. 50 years ago, on 25 January 1964, Australia suffered its greatest winter sports tragedy. Ross Milne was a 19-year-old Australian skier who was competing in the Olympics of 1964. On 25 January, a Saturday 2 days after the tragic luge incident of Kazimierz Kay-Skrzypecki, Austria's newspapers splashed a doom-laden article across its main Olympics page under the headline, "A Trapeze Act Without a Net," warning of the dangers of the course. It was incomparably quicker and more dangerous than in last year's Olympic test runs. Saturday morning, Milne and the other competitors had their first official training runs. He set off ahead of Brown and Brockhoff just before 11:30 a.m. Milne traveled no more than about 300 meters before entering one of the steepest parts of the course. As noted in the AZ, the course here is quite straight and therefore less dangerous, but a skier sees the steep part only just before arriving there. As he did so, Milne was confronted with a group of skiers blocking his way. Traveling at about 60 to 70 kilometers per hour, he swerved to avoid them, lost control, and smashed into a tree. Brown, who had skied past the site of the crash without realizing what had happened, stopped 150 meters further on, where the team's coach told him Milne had fallen. Milne was taken from the course unconscious on a stretcher, and a doctor attempted mouth-to-mouth resuscitation as the skier was flown by helicopter to hospital. He was rushed into the operating theater, but pronounced dead on arrival. Knud Enemark Jensen was part of the Danish cycling team competing in the 100-kilometer team time trial in the 1960 Rome Olympics. The race took place in intense heat, with temperatures soaring above 40 degrees Celsius, 104 degrees Fahrenheit. Jensen raced under the scorching sun at the 1960 Rome Olympics, pushing himself through the grueling 100-kilometer time trial. As the heat intensified, exhaustion set in, but he refused to slow down. Finally, the strain became too much, and Jensen collapsed unconscious onto the sweltering pavement. As he lost consciousness, he fell off his bicycle and suffered a severe head injury. Despite being rushed to a nearby hospital, he died a few hours later. Heat and exhaustion was said to be the main cause of his demise. Many athletes struggled with the extreme conditions that day, and dehydration was a common issue. There were also allegations that Jensen had taken a stimulant called Ronyacol, which was used at the time to dilate blood vessels and supposedly improve endurance. His team manager later admitted that Jensen had been given a combination of Ronyacol and another drug to combat the effects of the heat, though doping regulations were not as strict or clear as they are today. The complete autopsy report was never made public. Years later, Alvaro Marchiori, one of the doctors who conducted the autopsy, claimed that they had found traces of several things, including amphetamine. Bahman Golbarnezhad was an Iranian Paralympic racing cyclist competing in C4 classification events and an earlier powerlifter. During his powerlifting career, he won 12 gold medals and 1 silver medal in international competitions. Golbarnezhad was competing in the men's C4 25-kilometer time trial event at the Pontal section of the Olympic road cycling course. Approximately 1.5 kilometers from the finish line, he lost control of his bike and crashed into a rock on a mountainous stretch of the circuit, suffering severe head injuries. Medical personnel and emergency services were immediately summoned to the scene. Despite receiving urgent medical attention, Golbarnezhad was pronounced dead at the hospital due to severe head trauma, which was followed by a cardiac arrest. The exact cause of the crash is still unclear, but investigations suggested that it might have been related to a technical issue with his bike or a loss of control on a downhill section of the course. Golbarnezhad's death was the first in-flight fatality in Paralympic history, and it shocked the Paralympic community, leading to an outpouring of tributes and condolences from athletes, officials, and fans worldwide. Nicolas Bochatay was a Swiss speed skier who met his tragic fate during the 1992 Winter Olympics. February 22, 1992, was supposed to be a thrilling day for Nicolas Bochatay, a talented Swiss skier, as he warmed up for the final stretch of the Winter Olympics. As he and his team approached a familiar bump on the slope, the group filled in the adrenaline rush of airborne skiing. Bochatay, lost in the moment, failed to notice a stationary snowcat lurking behind a small hill. The machine, used to groom the snow, was camouflaged by the winter landscape. With his eyes fixed on the slope ahead, Bochatay launched himself off the bump, soaring through the air. In a heart-stopping instant, Bochatay landed directly in front of the snowcat, his skis and body colliding with the machine's metal frame. The impact was catastrophic. Bochatay's body crumpled under the force of the crash, inflicting fatal internal injuries. The paramedics arrived and they rushed him to the nearby hospital. Unfortunately, Nicolas gave in to his injuries and passed away. The incident sparked a heated debate over the snowcat's visibility and warning signals. Organizers claimed it had flashing lights and a siren, while the Swiss team disputed this, stating the machine was immobile and silent, hidden behind a small hill without any warning indicators. The question lingered: could this tragedy have been avoided? Francisco Lázaro was a Portuguese marathon runner who died during the 1912 Stockholm Olympics. His death is notable for being one of the first instances of an athlete dying during an Olympic event. Lázaro was competing in the marathon, a grueling race that took place in exceptionally hot weather. The marathon was particularly challenging, with temperatures reaching around 30 degrees Celsius, 86 degrees Fahrenheit. Lázaro, who was reportedly using a coat for sun protection, struggled with heat exhaustion and dehydration. During the race, he collapsed due to the extreme heat. Lázaro was carried off the course but later died from complications related to heat stroke and exhaustion. His death was attributed to the harsh conditions of the race and the lack of adequate hydration and support for athletes at that time. On May 24, 1964, Peru faced Argentina at the Estadio Nacional in Lima in a crucial match for the Tokyo Olympics football qualifiers. With Argentina leading 1-0 and only 6 minutes left in regular time, a potential equalizer by Peru was disallowed by Uruguayan referee Ángel Eduardo Pazos. This decision enraged the home fans, leading to a pitch invasion. Witnesses reported that fans threw seat cushions, bottles, and other objects onto the field. In response, Peruvian police deployed tear gas and fired shots into the air to disperse the crowd. This triggered panic, and people rushed to escape the gas. The stadium, instead of having standard gates, had solid corrugated steel shutters at the base of the tunnels leading from street level to the seating areas. These shutters, which were usually closed, trapped panicked spectators. Those at the front were pressed against the closed shutters, creating a crush that eventually forced the shutters to burst open. The majority of fatalities occurred in the stairwells leading to street level, with most victims suffering from internal hemorrhaging or asphyxiation. No deaths were reported from those who remained inside the stadium. A baby was born in the stadium amid the chaos, but it is unknown if either the child or the mother survived. Outside the stadium, the crowd caused widespread damage. Fans set fire to private homes and businesses, threw petrol-soaked paper into a nearby garage, and shattered windows. After 3 hours of violence, mounted police established a perimeter to halt further destruction. They also repelled mobs attacking the homes of Commander Jorge de Asambuja, who was accused of ordering the tear gas, and President Fernando Belaúnde Terry, who was criticized for police brutality. The next day, on May 25th, police dispersed a student protest outside San Marcos University, accusing them of inciting violence.